We're in a new phase of history. It's impossible to return to the stability of 1989 to 2014. And what is happening now is much closer to a version of historical normal. This is Putin's first visit to America in 10 years, but he's visiting a different America to the one he saw 10 years ago, and a different West. The West still possesses liberty and democracy, but it no longer values them and is therefore on course to losing them. Many say Trump should stand up against Putin, stand up for America. But that's an appeal to a world that is no longer there. Putin is not just a barbarian at the gate. He is the kind of barbarian that little by little we, some of us, are increasingly becoming ourselves at home in our democracies. So Trump and Putin share not just mutual attraction, and in Trump's case it becomes a kind of psychological dependence, but also an ideology, a global wash of revolutionary monarchism doing the rounds. Arriving, Putin's asks were three things: equalization and normalization, to be seen as a peer of major world leaders and be seen as respectable in the eyes of Western citizens. 2, bilateralism. Putin says, Trump, let's deal directly with one another. Forget Europe, forget Ukraine. 3rd, Putin came to use Trump as a prop to pressure Ukraine, so that eventually Ukraine becomes a defenseless, civically turbulent semi-dictatorship akin to Georgia. Now notice something. Putin is not after land acquisition as an end in itself in Ukraine. He wants land as a way of bringing Ukraine closer toward ungovernability and non-independence. And notice how dangerous an opponent Putin is for us because of his paranoia. Putin is paranoid to the point that he thinks that any opposition to him inside Russia must be a matter of malign foreign interference. Because Putin doesn't distinguish between domestic opposition and foreign interference, he is acutely sensitive to the interaction of democratic decline in our democracies and the Western capacity to act on the foreign stage. His paranoia makes him a deeper thinker than most Western leaders about the interaction of democratic stability and a capacity to exert coherent power on the foreign stage, which is why his main theory of victory over us is simply to wait and maybe ever so slightly accelerate the corrosion of Western democracies at home. Now let's do Trump's goals quickly. It's difficult to do his goals because he doesn't act to achieve goals as much as he acts to regulate his emotional needs. But nevertheless, he wanted at least 4 things from this meeting. Like Putin, bilateralism with Russia. 2nd, to detach Russia from China. 3rd, to get closer to the Nobel Peace Prize by getting a ceasefire. And to get closer to the Nobel Peace Prize by organizing a meeting between Putin and Zelensky. In part, these are goals for Trump, but in part they are just clutter to be got out of the way so that he can finally have the kind of relationship he really wants with Putin without getting criticized for it. Now, before we analyze the practical import of the meeting, we need to acknowledge that its biggest import is impractical and symbolic. And the symbolism is the symbolism of imperial borderlessness. Trump's slip that he was going to Russia when he was in fact going to Alaska. And the meeting itself, during which Putin didn't fail to raise the history of Alaska. And indeed, Mr. Lavrov arrived wearing a USSR t-shirt, which is, of course, a tremendous expression of imperial unboundedness. And Trump is far behind, but trying to catch up, having threatened Greenland and having threatened Canada with annexation. Now, the logic of this unboundedness, a distinctive feature of empire, is that what's yours is yours until it becomes mine, and what's mine is mine until it becomes yours. And there is an element Putin likes to add at this point, and that's that what's mine will only remain mine if I defend it by preemptively taking from you what's yours. Practical import, smaller picture first. Number 1, Putin succeeded in his main aim, which was normalization. The chief effect of the Alaska meeting will be a kind of disinhibition, liberating, normalizing romanticization of Putin in Western countries. Number 2, Trump flopped. He rolled out the red carpet for Putin to a degree that went beyond what he does for his supposed allies, and having made this concession of inviting Putin to US soil, he didn't get anything back. Moreover, I don't think he even knew how to try to get something back, because he doesn't know enough about the world. He doesn't know enough about Russia or Ukraine to know what it is that he could realistically have got out of Putin in a meeting of this kind. And to a degree, he recognized that, walking out without taking any questions. 3, it could have been worse. Trump acknowledged that Ukraine needed to accept whatever was going to be proposed, and we are yet to see how long it will take for Trump to attack Zelensky again for not wanting to accede to whatever it is the Kremlin or Washington ask of him. Bigger picture geopolitical import. Number 1, it's too early. Ukraine is today strong enough to say no to Putin's maximalist imperialist demands, no to demilitarization, no to Russian territorial acquisition of lands they never managed to conquer by force. Number 2, America won't fix this war. Number 3, Ukraine now largely depends on Europe, but Europe's Russia-Ukraine policy is incoherent to the point of unseriousness. Several smaller European countries want to help Ukraine, but they can't do enough. Big West European countries talk about helping Ukraine, but in a way that's more about appeasing their electorates rather than developing strategic capacity to change the geopolitical predicament in Eastern Europe. Number 4, as Europe acts to its best capacity, it will run into a paradox. You need to be stronger on defense to stand up to Putin. But the stronger you are on defense, the more you introduce policies of austerity that undermine trust in democratic institutions. That means your armies might get stronger, but as they get stronger, they will become increasingly answerable to populist politicians who are admirers of Putin. My pragmatic prescription here is there is no good solution, so you've got to try to have as much of the cake and eat it. 5, there is a global ideology doing the rounds, and I call it revolutionary monarchism. Western citizens are increasingly keen to elect politicians who can flick their fingers and get things done without being interfered with by institutions and constitutions. This is a product of a deep pathology of distrust triggered by many different social forces. But it is in the end an illusory expectation. Unless you run things through reformed versions of our institutions and constitutions, you will descend into authoritarianism and you won't get anything sustainably done. I'll be talking about this ideological wash next on the main channel. 6, a spectre of narcissism is haunting global affairs. Trump has narcissistically idealized Putin and admitted Putin into a magical society of which both he and Putin are members, expulsion from which would prove incredibly painful. To understand more about Trump's inability to criticize Putin, detach himself from him, his narcissistic dependence on Putin, watch this video next.